Welcome to episode 2 of The View with Vertex. I'm your host, Isaac Morrison, and today's guest is a good friend of mine. He's an advanced scaffolder. He's worked for some of the biggest scaffolding businesses in the UK and on some of the most high-profile construction projects for some of the biggest clients. He's also a budding entrepreneur himself with his brewing company, the Wakey Wakey Brew Co. And
thanks for having me, Isaac.
it's good to have you on. Obviously, we're still getting used to some of the equipment and bits and pieces, but yeah, great to have you on and looking forward to hearing more about your story.
Pleasure to be here.
I've got to start kind of from the very beginning. Your journey, first footsteps into the scaffolding industry. I know we've been talking a lot about it off air. Where did it all begin for you?
I was working at North Manchester General Hospital in medical records, filing them away as a well. I did that between 16 and 18 throughout college, and got a phone call off my dad's mate who was working at GH Scaffolding at the time. And he basically needed a labourer, and they convinced me that it was a good route to go down. I was looking at going to university after college, so it was like, build some money up.
So the uni thing, just so people know about this, Ant's probably more familiar with a lot of the equipment in the studio than I am, because at university it was sound engineering, wasn't it?
Yeah, I did sound engineering at university. I did some in college as well. It was kind of music technology and sound engineering throughout college and university years.
Yeah. And at college was kind of alongside the port of work at the hospital, and then later what would be the starting scaffolding with GH.
Yeah, kind of did that on the side of doing university. Yeah. Got that phone call. It was only supposed to be 3 weeks, just to kind of this. I think somebody was injured. They hurt themselves, and he was a man down. So
is just to go back to that though. How did this person injure himself? Because I couldn't believe this when I heard it off camera.
He was a break dancer on the side, so he was a similar age to me, and his thing was mine was music technology and playing in bands. His was break dancing, and I think he sprained his wrist. So he had. You
should have all stuck together. You could have been a travelling show.
Yeah.
So that's he injured himself. You get the phone call.
And 3 weeks down the line, when I was due to go back to my boring as hell day job, filing medical records, they all got me in the pub to say goodbye, but then basically convinced me to stay. And I got on the phone that afternoon and handed me notice in at the hospital, and stayed in scaffolding for a further, I can't remember how many weeks it was, just to build that extra money up. And I did go to university. At the end of that, I didn't convince me to not go there. Although it's funny that I did 4 years at university. First year was a bit of a failed attempt, unfortunately.
I think that's true. Most people in it.
But yeah,
especially if you throw scaffolding into the mix as well. Do you know what I mean?
Every break, summer break, I was back scaffolding, and then obviously the second, third, and fourth years weren't full weeks. So any days I had off university where I should have been doing university work, I was scaffolding.
Scaffolding comes with its own distractions as well, doesn't it?
It does.
You were talking off air about the handing the notice, and I found this really interesting as well, because I've had similar experiences of this. But when you handed your notice in with the hospital, just what did that look like? You kind of, it wasn't just a case of saying, I've found this really great gig, scaffolding. I've decided what to take my career in a different direction. You phoned.
No, I made a quite a convoluted story about about how I'd got into university, even though this was probably beginning of August, let's say, and universities don't usually start till like mid-September, and I was moving down there and getting myself settled in. So I didn't know what else to say, and she wished me the best of luck, and that was that. I mean, they hit me with a bill for all the holidays that I'd taken.
Oh, really?
Yeah, of course they did. I'd taken holidays that I hadn't accrued.
All right, okay.
But I actually can't remember whether I paid that back, but a little bit less than that. A long time ago. Sure they've not missed it.
No, the reason why I found it interesting was because obviously talking about early years and when you starting any career or whatever. And that kind of transition from being in school to then going into full-time education, to go into full-time work and kind of starting your life, really. It's a weird transition because I remember something similar myself. I didn't know what I wanted to do. This was way before scaffolding had ever come along. And I had to go to college. And it was like, it was kind of like school had ended and college was starting. Didn't really have an idea what I wanted to do. And then, told them the course that I thought I wanted to do. I think it was psychology or something like that. Anything with an ology at the end of it. So, that was what I was going to do. And then because of my GCSE results, they were like, no, you've got to do this course, that course, the other course. And I'm like, that's not why I'm going to college. Like, I'm a grown up now. I've left all that behind. I can make my own.
Study what I want to
study.
I can
make my own decisions.
Not the other bits. Yeah.
So I was like, very early on for me, I was like, no, I'm done with this. I'm going to go and find a job. Wasn't scaffolding straight away, by the way. I think I ended up working in a perfume warehouse. More about that another time, I suppose. But yeah, wasn't exactly for me. Terrible one. The apprenticeship with Allied and getting into scaffolding came maybe a year or so after that, doing weird, different, working on burger vans and stuff. But yeah, I'm glad. Glad I got into it in the end. But
you try all kinds of different things before you find the right job for you, don't you? And like I say, scaffolding is a weird way into it. You don't. And I don't think anybody wakes up and go, "I want to be a scaffolder." Maybe there is the odd one. I think you're either born into it or you're sometimes roped into it.
Well, yeah, I think with you, there's kind of a sense of that. You kind of got brought into it, but in that way, family members bringing you into the industry. With me, it was Frankie had started scaffolding.
Of course he had.
And I'd seen that I was earning buttons. He'd started earning a little bit of money. He'd sort of grown in stature a little bit, put a bit of timber, and I was like, I thought, yeah, maybe I need to do something a bit more hands-on than working in a perfume warehouse. That's kind of where I got into it. But it's interesting that you said, nobody sort of starts out in life going, I want to be a scaffolder. And with the exception of a couple of people, I know Corf, I think he definitely did think that.
I think he was one who was born into it. That's what I mean.
Like the nepotism.
You're born into it or you're roped into it. There's no. I don't think anybody joins it off their own back. And fair play if they do.
Yeah. There are easier walks of life, aren't there?
Certainly.
I say this to the missus sometimes, Sarah. I'm like, because she always goes, you know what you want to do. You've got a plan. I don't know really what I still don't know what I want to do, which I don't think that's a problem at all. But yeah, I'm like, I didn't come out the womb wanting to be a scaffolder, the spanner in my hand. It's just I've fallen into something, and then I've kind of tried to take it as far as I can take it. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's probably human nature, that you want to kind of progress and move on. You just sort of, the path sort of finds itself in a way.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when you after that time with GH, moved on to
HT.
What was sort of the thinking behind?
I'd been there obviously I'd been at GH throughout uni. Gone obviously because it couldn't be full time while I was doing my university work, but I pretty much finished my university work. Tried to find work in the field that I wanted to, in terms of like live sound engineering, going out on tour with gigs. That seemed really difficult. It was a really hard job to get into. I think that's another one where you plenty of people want to do it. It's a job that's attractive, but it's very hard to get into. You have to know somebody who's got the power to get you in there.
Strangely enough, though, I mean, you worked for GH when they were like a predominantly tube and fitting company. They later sort of went into layer.
Yeah, when they turned to multi-scaff, yeah.
Yeah, and, layer, probably one of the manufacturers that are most involved with, events and building stages and stuff like we spoke about. Acorn, didn't we?
Yeah, Acorn Scaffolding do a lot of that kind of work.
So that experience, you never know, could have eventually led you into the kind of the sound engineering being a road. It's just weird how life sort of takes its path, isn't it?
Yeah. So moving from GH to to HT was that was based on I didn't see any roads for improvement. Well, it was what was now multi-scaff. I'd been there since I was 18. I was now 22, maybe turning 23.
Yeah, and I suppose with a small, I'm not digging them up, but HT being a bigger company, there's more kind of opportunities there as a small team. And I know this myself because we had a scaffolding business, or I've recently come out of a scaffolding business, and as a small team, productivity comes first, and sometimes training almost takes a bit of a back burner.
Yeah.
Whereas with a bigger company, you've got that, more of that opportunity to get yourself progressed and trained up.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So that was the goal, to get trained up. And in fairness, I spent a year and a half there, and I think there was a 6-month period where it was, let's see how you're getting on, and then we'll talk about putting you through your tickets. And then after that 6-month period, it was, we'll get you sorted. And yeah, after about a year and a half, I was like, right, no, I need to pay for it myself. Kind of got pushed into it a little bit. Paying for, I was probably still hanging on in the back of my head for them paying.
How so?
For
pushed into it?
You know what lads are like, other lads. You know what I mean? They in the best way possible. They're like, well, what are you fucking waiting for them for? Pay for it yourself. If you got the money sat there, I'm like, yeah, well, pay for it yourself. Don't rely on them. Actually, the best advice.
I could see myself being one of them voices. If I'm honest.
Yeah. At the time, I didn't get it. I felt like there was being on my case a little bit. Like I was like, I was kind of, well, why should I? Why would they? Why they get the funding to train me? Why will they not? But looking back on it now, it's one of the best bits of advice I've ever been given.
Yeah, I guess as well, you're not beholden to anyone.
That to no one.
Yeah, definitely.
I was able to, and it became more. I'm struggling to think of the word to use. So
an economic decision, would you say?
No. That decision and that validation of paying for it myself made leaving when I needed to easier, because
you didn't feel like you owed somebody something.
Yeah, and when it comes to well, I suppose when you do get tickets,
doors open up.
Yeah, and money changes. You want to see an increase in your wages, and when you don't think they match what effort you've put in, ultimately you look for outroads. And I think if they've paid for you, you kind of owe them more. You owe them that time back. Then I owed nobody.
It's a shame because not a lot of there's a lot of people who don't think like that. I think think like that. I wouldn't want to sort of take something from somebody and not give back.
Yeah.
So but a lot of people aren't that bloody sort of conscious about they're just like, oh, it's like we were saying before, they get funding for it, so why shouldn't they pay? I think a lot of people have that attitude, like they're getting funding for it, so like I know they put me through my tickets, but bollocks to them, I'm off.
Yeah.
But as from the owner of a company, from my perspective, there are avenues and channels for funding. You can access grants and whatnot, but there's still an impact on the business. You know what I mean? You've still got to let that guy go. You still got to find just because it's funded, you might not get the money when the guy's on the course. So there's still a cash flow implications to it, certainly for a small company. But yeah, like you say, once if you've put that money in yourself and all the rest of it, you owe nobody a thing, do you really?
No.
It's an interesting one. One thing I did want to touch on, obviously, it's I think this podcast, what we try to do with it is get kind of important messages out as best as we can. Good and bad kind of experiences in scaffolding. I know I've had plenty of good experiences, and we're talking off air. There've been some challenging times as well.
Definitely.
Would you say that's been the case for yourself?
Yeah. There's ups and downs in all walks of life, especially at work. And I mean, overall, fond memories.
Yeah.
And on every job I've worked on. But there's also been the I suppose you could call them challenging times. where you're questioning your choices, yourself. Just why am I here? Why am I doing this? Sometimes why am I putting up with this?
Yeah, definitely.
So
yeah, because I was saying, certain companies you go to, like you can be part of the in crowd, your flavour of the month, and all the rest of it. I was saying to you yesterday, when I went working overseas, started for a company. I'm not going to mention the name, but started for a company, and there was a few English lads there, a few Aussie lads there, and it was a weird balancing act because it was like you try to fit in with your compatriots. You know what I mean? Your people from the same countries. You don't want to piss the Aussies off. You're in their country, and you know what I mean. You're kind of a guest. So there's a bit of a balance in that, but I just found the whole place to be really clicker. I found the dynamic seemed you either sucked up to the locals, and then you were part of the kind of in crowd, or you were maybe a little bit isolated. And I found, as I say, you know what I'm like. I've never had a problem telling someone what I think. If somebody wants to get into an argument or a tangle with me, I'm more than happy to stand my ground with anybody. But sometimes these things can end up being a bit more insidious, where it's like it's easy to defend yourself when someone's up front and picking at you.
Yeah,
you can go back at them and say what you want to say. But sometimes it's like I say, more insidious, where it's like, oh, him over there, and he's like they're trying to kind of isolate people. Did you find sometimes that was kind of? I think it's another side of it is it tends to be like, obviously you're into your beer brewing and stuff like that. The sound engineering, you went to uni and all the rest of it. A lot of scaffolders are from backgrounds other than that. Easy to isolate somebody from that background. Did you find that was?
Yeah. Not everywhere, but there has been times and places where you just. I suppose the best way to put it is wankers in every walk of life, and they will try and do those things. They will try and isolate you and make you feel small and try and turn people against you. Supposing like you could class it as an act of bullying, just that kind of putting people down for no reason other than they just don't like you because you're different, or they see you as a threat because you're better at your job than them.
That happens as well.
Yeah.
No, you're right. It takes place for all sorts of reasons. It's a rite of passage in our industry. And the young lad comes in, you put the feet in the rope and wheel, in the bucket and the rope and wheel, they pull themselves up, making them bump start a still saw and stuff like that. There is banter and there's crack, but there's there's a line there.
There's more malicious things that go on. Now we had this. So obviously, we chatted yesterday about some of these things to kind of get a feel for where we could go with it. And I was telling Leanne, saying like kind of some of the subjects that we'd want to have a look at covering, and the obviously, so I suppose we called it a bullying culture.
Yeah.
And does that exist in scaffolding? And Leanne's view on that was completely different to mine. We was talking about some of the things that has gone on, stories that I've shared with her. The idea, you just said about putting the new lad's feet in the rope and wheel, but I remember distinctly when like back to the days at GH, two lads who I worked with, Steve Baxendale, who was pretty much my mentor for a long time as a young scaffolder.
Great mentor, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant scaffolder. He's still a good friend now. I see him every now and again, not as much as I'd like to, but actually sorted him some beer out for a party, and it went down a treat apparently.
Really?
We're getting all his guests were absolutely thrilled with it.
I can't wait to crack one of these open. I'm going to cut to that now just so everyone can have a look at it. Oh, no, I didn't. We'll look at the beers in a couple of minutes.
Yeah, so there was Steve and a lad called Pete Skidmore. Do you know Skidders?
I don't.
I've not seen him in a long time.
I remember him being. Was he on the Una? He's on Manchester Uni.
No,
For AC.
he's not worked at any of the big firms while I've been there.
Right.
Like he's either way, he was a good lad,
Yeah.
but and then Sue grabbed me and hung me off the scaffold, but just literally by my belt. And Leanne is like, I was speaking to Leanne, and she's like, that's bullying, and I'm like, no, that's fucking hilarious.
Yeah. Yeah,
Like,
there's definitely a difference.
I wasn't like crying saying get off me. I was like laughing my head off, hanging off this scaffold, going, get off me, you fucking bastards. Like it's the same with, like, taping somebody up against a steel pillar and leaving them there all day.
Yeah.
That's
things-
your labourer. Technically, you need them handing gear out to you.
Yeah.
And getting the next lift ready or whatever, doing something. But no, sometimes it's, they've had a gob on them. You know what? Let's tape them to that fucking steel pillar and see how they like that for a change. We'll manage this job on our own. And you do it.
Yeah, there really is. There's a
But
line.
it's not bullying.
It's a fine line.
Yeah.
But it's 100%. I believe it's a rite of passage. It's just when people, like you say, they take it too far and it becomes bullying. It becomes isolation. I always remember when I was over there, when I was in Australia, Mrs. coming home to Sarah of an evening, and I'd be telling her, little stories about this and that. And she'd be like, "It sounds horrible, that lot." And I was like, idiots, you know what I mean? I'm not asked. And then she went, "Do you feel like they're bullying you?" And for me to kind of admit that, I'd never ever, she probably never heard me say it, until she hears this. I'd never say, because you're like, I can't be bullied. I can handle myself. I can look after myself.
Yeah.
As I say, sometimes it's subtle and it's
slowly grinding away.
Yeah.
Completely agree with you.
You tell a story, they try to discredit it. I'm like, as I say, it's easy to defend yourself when someone's coming at you, but when someone's, being a bit more obtuse about it, it's a difficult environment to be in. And I've felt it since, in other, I'd say that one was probably more of a, I don't know whether it be a cultural thing or whatever. Do you know what I mean? It was a strange set of circumstances. I've had it, like you say, when I've been running scaffolding sites for companies. I've come onto somebody else's site there, running the site, and they've not liked the idea that I'm there, and they'll sort of try and discredit what I'm saying,
belittle you,
put me on rubbish jobs. Like I'll kind of show him. I remember once I went away for I had an operation on my wrist, and my labourer at the time ended up working with this other gang, on someone else's site and everything. So I'm off for about a month and a half. Finally start being able to use my wrist again and everything. Things are looking all right. Go back in, and then there's this little click in there, and I'm on this site, and they're like, "Yeah, talk to you in a minute," that kind of stuff. I'm like, you know what I mean? And on that occasion, it did end up coming to a head where it's like, this guy's going, "When's that going to be done?" I'm like, every time I drill into this floor, I was setting handrails. I said, every time I drill into this floor, I'm hitting rebar. He's like, "Well, you want to get it sorted by the end of this shift?" And I'm like, "Oh, what?" Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it ends up in this big heated argument and everything. I spoke to the guy since, by the way. I'm not going to mention any names, but sound as now. I think it just needs to collect. Maybe he didn't realise he was doing it. Maybe he didn't realise that he was trying to defend. He maybe felt there was a threat to his position, which there definitely wasn't. So if anything, the less responsibility I get, the better. But yeah, it does happen. It does happen, even to in all walks of life, and not just in the scaffolding industry. But yeah, I think the lines get blurred in our industry more because there's an expectation of banter.
Yeah,
it's going to take place.
Definitely. There's also the if you look at other industries, hard to pick one out particularly, but scaffolding is very unique. There's no human resources in scaffolding, is there? You can't. There's no HR team to say, "Oh, you're not allowed to speak to people like that." You got to kind of fucking deal with it and basically deal with it yourself and find the right solution. And it's not always a case of getting aggressive and offering somebody out for a fight. That's, if anything, me personally, that's not the way you go about it. Some people, they don't know any other way, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
You have to find a way around it to clear the air and make sure that you've got a decent working environment ultimately. you can be in certain places. I've certainly been in them over the years where the people there just don't want that to be the case, and they want a hostile environment. They want to see antagonization and aggression on a day-to-day basis because they think that's fun.
Yeah, and it's a shame. I think before we move on, because I did want to touch on it. I did want to sort of have that conversation because I think it's an important one. So before we move on, for people watching, I'd say as we say, maybe the HR sort of element is coming into scaffolding more and more now. There are avenues where you can take these disputes and things like that.
It's hard to see from obviously I'm now a bit of a smaller firm again, because it allows me to spend more time on my business outside of scaffolding. So it is difficult. We don't have anything like that. It is good to hear if that's the case at the bigger firms because
it's changing. It is changing. What I'd say, I mean, and obviously there's this huge conversation happening around mental health, and I've read some horrendous things, in LinkedIn and in the media and stuff like that recently, and the message always seems to be, it's okay to talk, it's not weak to speak. There's all these kind of what would you call it, initiatives and campaigns going around. I think one you don't necessarily see as often, and I think it speaks to this topic as well, is people in positions of authority or responsibility looking out for it. Looking out for it. So getting people in for toolbox talks, having the discussion, and being proactive in looking for issues rather than waiting for somebody to come to you and say, listen, I need to move gangs because this lot aren't really being very fair to me or whatever. I'd say we need to get management and senior management involved in the policing of workplace bullying, I'd say.
Yeah. We've certainly got. I mean, it might not go as far as managing. I don't think there's so much of a culture that where I'm currently working. There's a really good team of lads. They're all sound. There's not anybody really.
The lads are kind of policing themselves.
I'm sure there's lads who don't always see eye to eye, but there's definitely not an element. There don't seem to be any elements of bullying going on. Everybody kind of good.
I think culture's the word you get a lot.
Good culture, good air of camaraderie and stuff like that going on. But our gaffer just put it out to us. He went, "You come to me privately. If you've got an issue with working with anybody, I'll sort it out. In terms of, I won't put you with them. If I know there's an issue and you don't like working with somebody, I won't make you work with them."
We should say the gaffer he's talking about, Carl, who owns Elite Scaffolding. I get a good friend of mine, friend of Vertex as well. We do a lot of work with Carl. It's really, I didn't know that actually, but it's really refreshing to hear that he's proactively monitoring people's attitudes towards.
He needs. We're only a small team. He needs his gangs to work well. He can't have gangs who don't work well together because the work doesn't get done properly. Need teams who understand each other, have banter all you want, but don't fucking take the piss on the job. Get the work done. Don't work against each other. Yeah. And that, unfortunately, when you have a team who doesn't quite get on, you do often find there'll be somebody there who doesn't want to play ball with the rest of the team. There'll always be somebody going against the grain. One
drop of poison can spoil a meal.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
Really can.
So it's an important thing to. It's really interesting. I didn't know that he sort of it's proactively been out to lads and tried to police. That's really refreshing to hear, actually.
Yeah. No.
Another friend of mine who owns a company, iScaff, like a Ross Brown. I spoke to him a few weeks ago. We was at a layer, a seminar, like a convention, and he mentioned that he'd actually gone as far as to bring a psychologist in. Psychologist would be the proper term, I think. I was going to say psychiatrist, but I think it is psychologist. He brought him in and actually brought him into the teams. He'd actually done some kind of psychological profiling on the lads to see which personality type to perhaps gel with and try to mix the gangs up, the work teams up to kind of, ensure they gel and hopefully get the best kind of product to get them.
Quite an interesting way to do it.
It is.
It'd be interesting to know if it works for him.
It is. Well, Ross, if you're watching, you're next in the hot seat, mate. If you want to come on and tell us how that's going, definitely interested to hear your story. Lining up guests here. It really is interesting though. Like I shot the last episode last week. Really getting a lot of people saying, "Oh, yeah, that sounds really interesting." That wouldn't mind coming in and having a chat. So he's starting to gain a bit of traction.
Good.
Hopefully we don't get too drunk on this one. Because I think Addy set the camera up now. This is Ant's brewing company, the Wakey Wakey Brew Co, which we're gonna get to in a couple of seconds. Last little bit about scaffolding before we get onto that. So you're at HT with a mentor, stay, get your qualifications, or begin to start getting your qualifications. Move on to Linden.
Yeah, Linden Scaffolding.
So another company we both worked at.
Well, we worked together there for a little bit, didn't we?
I think I'd say that's more where I know you from, where we've kind of worked together a lot and got to know each other.
We've been in touch since then. I don't think we've really worked together since then. But
no, it's a shame. But I kind of came into the training and consultants just after leaving there, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was some fond memories.
Definitely.
Waking up early mornings, driving to Anfield. I don't know why I'm counting that as within the fond memories.
I know, waking up early to go to Anfield.
Yeah, always
going to Anfield bad any time as a United fan.
We can say that. We can
definitely say that. They'd only say the same.
Absolutely. And by the way, part of that job was demolition, which that pleased me greatly. There was a lot of bits and pieces that needed smashing up, and I took great care and attention in
demolishing part of Anfield,
knocking all that crest. Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. Some fucking funny stories. Driving the vans setting on fire. There was all sorts, wasn't there?
Oh yeah.
But yeah, as we're saying, always a coffee there in the morning. I think that's when I first started to get the idea of your personality. Was a bit of a. Would you say you're a bit of a? Is foodie the right term?
Yeah. I'm 100%. I've always liked my food. Always been into food. Good food.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose good drink. Probably the drink in terms of beer. Coming to it later. Don't get me wrong. When I was younger, you would just smash pints down your neck. It didn't really matter what it was, as long as it was cold and refreshing. But there was definitely a turn. It's probably. Obviously, Punk IPA came out like 2007, so that was quite a bit before I really got into it. But then there was a point where the IPA
scene
or the IPA craze hit,
mm-hmm.
and I got my first taste of IPA, and before I knew it, I was getting led into different styles of beer, and it wasn't just IPAs, and then it became cask beer, and now I quite literally struggle to drink anything that's not cask beer.
Yeah. I'm not going to say beer snob, but yeah. It's weird because you acquire a taste. I remember when I first started drinking red wine. The story behind that is I was doing a bit of training at the time, so I was like quite fit, and I'd read, I think it was like in fucking Men's Health, something like that. Oh yeah, a glass of red wine with your meal is like good. It promotes this, that, and the other. Circulation's better. And then I realised I quite like the taste of this stuff. It's so yeah. But then if I look at the wines I drink when I first started drinking it, definitely it's an acquired taste in it. You do sort of like start your palate develops and all the rest of it. So yeah, the interesting thing with the ales and like IPAs and stuff like that. When we lived overseas, when we lived in Australia, you'll have heard of this place as well. I would imagine. We were living in Fremantle, and there's a microbrewery there called Little Creatures. Have you come across their stuff before?
Little Creatures.
Yeah, I think they sold into some supermarkets over there.
Not off the top of my head. I've heard of Little Critters, but they're in Sheffield.
All right. They definitely. Who's copied who? It's too close for comfort. That.
It's not for me to say.
But yeah, but it's weird because, as I say, got home from there. ended up getting into red wines. We lived next to one of the biggest wine producing regions in Australia. So we was not far from Margaret River, Swan Valley, both big wine producing regions. And then 2 seconds away from this Little Creatures, which I just thought was beer, innit?
I'll Google them in a bit.
Yeah. Oh, mega place.
I'm really surprised I've not heard of them.
It's a little mega place. Went down there. It was just a case of going there just for a beer. Never really appreciated what was on offer. You know what I mean? Whereas now I've come home, all the things that I just took for granted over there, I didn't even really give a shit about while I was over there. I'm now thinking, oh God, that was there, and I could have, you know what I mean? I could have been in Little Creatures and trying all the different beers and trying all the different wines. I mean, we did go wine testing a couple of times, but it was just a piss up, really.
Oh well, even when you're beer tasting, it's a piss up.
Yeah,
beer tasting, wine tasting, it all results in one thing.
I was saying, by the way, we need to do a beer, a wine, or possibly whiskey. We were saying, weren't we?
Yeah.
A whiskey tasting episode. So if anybody else is keen for that, hit me up, give us a shout, and we'll get you on.
Sounds like a great idea.
Yeah. Or a fucking terrible idea, but
I could certainly come up with some good suggestions for any of those three. I enjoy my wine, beer, and whiskey.
Yeah, and your food as well. This is what I was saying about Anfield. I remember you always coming in. You always had like a jerk rub for your chicken. You're like, I've just made this rub and that. You're like, oh, that's lovely that.
Well, it was at that time where I think we was just saving up for a house. So me and her didn't we weren't living together. Oh, we was, but we weren't in our own house. So we had more than enough money to kind of just save up, and then we was always like passing our time by going out and buying weird and wonderful things to cook, rather than just sticking to the norm or doing something else. We kind of really found our pastime in cooking.
Yeah.
And that's just carried on. One of the big ones for me was curry. I love making curry, and I must have spent a good 5 years really getting it down, like to how to make a good curry from scratch to now where I'd literally go home. She says, I want curry, and we make curry from scratch. There's no jars, no pastes. It's everything from raw ingredients.
You're talking yourself into me and my missus going around for something.
Hey, you'd be more than welcome.
Have you still got a bar in your garden, by the way?
The bar,
was it called the Scaffolders Arms?
We did call it the Scaffolders Arms.
Yeah.
So the what is now the current brew setup.
Is that where the beer's brewed now?
Yeah. Do you want me to cover that in a little?
No. We'll go into that now.
Okay, cool. Obviously everybody had a little bit of a lockdown project. I'd already started brewing beer as like homebrew back in 2018, back end of the summer 2018 is when we first started doing the home brewing. Obviously fast forward 2020 lockdown, and that whole like the pubs being indefinitely shut.
Yeah, a massive social aspect for a lot of people.
For us, it was. We loved going out into Rochdale, and as soon as they were back open in any shape or form, we was down there making sure they was getting what money we had to kind of support them and make sure that they were open now. Because Rochdale's got an absolutely fantastic drinking scene in general. I'll touch on that in a bit later.
And when you say Rochdale, are we including Middleton in this? Because Middleton's a contentious one. It's like, is it Rochdale or is it?
I am not personally including Middleton in that statement. However, Middleton does have its good places. It also has its bad.
You include it within
Rochdale Town Centre a Rochdale Town Centre is great, and people have this dim view of it from the outside because of how it was probably 15 years ago now, when it was a bit run down. They've developed it. There's at least, obviously, my big thing is real ale. There is at least 10 real ale pubs. Like, you can pub crawl 8 to 10 pubs in Rochdale and have a good pint of real ale in every single one of them. But they won't just serve real ale. They will have your craft lagers on. They will have ciders, both real and like your keg, your fizzy cider, but that real cider is in
Like
almost,
scrumpy.
yeah, like scrumpies.
Yeah.
You've got swanky wine bars where you can get some really really rare bottles of wine.
These confusing me here. Go on.
Are we okay?
Yeah,
are we
we're good,
okay?
we're
Yeah,
good, we're
sorry. Yeah, sorry. So yeah, there's cocktail bars. They've got this new mini golf bit near where the cinema is. They built like a new cinema. I'm sure there might even be bowling there as well. But the mini golf is a great day out for like young couples or families even. You know, just go and have a few beers and this indoor mini golf is such fun. I really enjoyed it. And
you know what,
there seems to be a lot more to do in Rochdale. Even now, from when I moved there back in 2017, it's changed so much. Obviously, bearing in mind 2 years of it, we weren't allowed out the house practically.
Yeah. Yeah, weird. Everyone had a different experience of lockdown. And you said there, lockdown project. My sad lockdown project was my NCRQ, so it's like a qualification in health and safety.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Which is like kind of led to the business that I'm running now. So
but you used your time and you got something done.
Yeah, I used my time, got something done, and all the rest of it. But I think everybody had kind of a different experience of lockdown. Where I was lucky enough. I was working for Simi at the time, so I was furloughed at 80% of my wages. Which yourself, especially working in construction, you're out on the road a lot. It's not really easy to rein your spending in by roughly 20%. You're not out of the house. You're not putting anything in your car. You're not spending buying coffees.
Yeah,
and,
so you inadvertently you're up, aren't you, on 80%?
Yeah.
You're not stopping at the garage to buy yourself a coffee, which always ends up coming with a biscuit or crisps or
the full meal deal.
Yeah, exactly.
And then that's just on the way to work, and then you want something. So you can end up spending absolute fortunes while you're at work. So my experience of lockdown,
on those long drives back from Liverpool, how many passengers had driving beers?
Oh man, that van was like a rolling disco. I remember me and Lee. Should I tell this? It's not that bad. I'm going to tell it.
Is this what I'm thinking you're going to say?
Yeah,
it's that, isn't it?
Yeah. So we decided we were going to try and drink 8 cans of strong. Well, I had Strongbow. He had whatever lager he had. Probably something stronger than Strongbow as well.
Yeah.
Between Liverpool and Manchester. Was this on a Friday? It was either on a Friday or a Saturday. The roads weren't.
It was a Friday.
It was a Friday. Okay. The roads weren't that bad, so it wasn't a pity we were sat in traffic for long periods of time. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was
all right. You two weren't driving. I was.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know how legal this is, but anyway, 8 cans each. Finish them by the time we get back to Failsworth. 45-minute drive or something like that. Decide we're going to go into Tesco for a few more.
Yeah.
Yeah. Walked into Tesco, walking across to the beer aisle. Lee spots this big yellow foam football. And then out of nowhere, just blast this thing up into the start. I think, what the fuck are you doing?
What a way to draw attention to yourself.
Yeah. Luckily, it was only foam.
Yeah.
But, I thought nothing of it. Bit of a giggle and all the rest of it. Gets our beers, goes to the pub that we're doing. I went home. 2 weeks later, he gets pulled into the office because the Tesco had been on to the company that we worked for at the time. You can probably work it out from what I've said, but to the management, and he got a right roast if he's lucky not to have lost his job. But how much of that we're leaving? I don't.
Why did I not know he got pulled into?
Oh yeah, he got pulled in for it. Yeah, because someone seen the van. Yeah, they seen the van. I don't know whether it got as far as seeing the CCTV. He owned up to it straight away. And I was like, yeah, it was me. It's only a bit of a giggle, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think you know what as well. That's something I always stand by at work. The amount of people who either do something silly or do something by accident. It doesn't matter, and they go, "Oh, don't tell anyone." And then when who's broke that, who's done this, and everyone's having to be quiet, just own up to it.
Yeah,
we had.
It's better, isn't it?
Do you know what? I'm gonna tell a story now. He actually probably won't mind. Maybe the way I'm using the story, he potentially might not like, but he's a good lad. I've got a lot of time for the lad who I'm talking about, but I'm not going to name any names. Shouted out of the van window at a girl on a balcony, "Get your socks off." Yeah, completely harmless. But when he got back to the gaffer, he'd not shouted that. She decided that he'd said something else. And at the end of the day, he's you know, banged to rights because it's her word against his. Yeah. And the gaffer knew who'd done it because of whose van they were in. And he wouldn't admit. He's like, I'm not saying anything. He said, if you're bothered, you tell him. I was like, so be a man and just tell, like, own up to doing it and tell him you didn't say what she's saying you said, but if you're honest, said it, less will come of it. Yeah. So he rang the gaffer up and was honest. Yeah. And he still sacked him.
Oh wow!
I shouldn't laugh at the. It was a very silly move.
Yeah, well, we live.
I had to say, you are 9 times out of 10 better off just holding your hands up and admitting when you've done wrong.
In the first instance.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think so. I like I say, I've always lived and died by being super transparent. You know, if I've done something wrong, if I've got something wrong. I was on in a course for the week, I mentioned something, and someone had said, "Oh, you know, it's changed." I was like, and fair enough, it's changed. I didn't realise it had changed. And you own it, and you go, look, very, very minute detail, by the way.
Yeah.
But I said, yeah, that part of it's changed. I wasn't aware that it had recently changed, and that's it. I think it's better than going, oh yeah. Now you mention it, yeah, I do remember. Force of habit, I've always.
Yeah.
It's easy to just go, yeah.
I got that wrong.
Yeah. It's a fucking big deal.
Yeah, it's not exactly. It's not, is it? It's not.
Yeah, but you get that comes with age as well, doesn't it? Do you know what I mean? As you get older, you're not really as arsed, are you? What people think, you just think, yeah, it is what it is.
I think that goes right back to that before about Andy be noticing at the hospital. Yeah, like making this big convoluted story rather than just going, yeah, I'm not coming back. I've got something else I want to do. Thanks for having me. See you later.
What have they written me, mum?
yeah. What happens if it goes on my personal record or my national record of achievement, which they used to bang on about when you was in school? And
never seen that since.
No, exactly.
Imagine going to an interview with it. Imagine. I'm 37. They'll be 38 in June. Imagine going to a job interview and go, I brought my record of achievement. I got a fucking C in science. I didn't get a C in science, by the way.
What's a job interview, by the way? I don't think I've ever done one of those since the hospital, by the way, because I've basically worked in scaffolding.
You know what?
Do we have job interviews in scaffolding? We don't.
In Australia, they did. It was quite formal over there. Even with just
really,
it was quite formal. Not every firm you work at, but a lot of them were quite formal. And then the two that stick out as actual job interviews for me were the job interview for Simeon and the job interview I did one.
I can imagine you having to have an interview stuff like that. Yeah.
So I did one for them, and I did one for like the same week. I just decided I wanted to be off the tools, and I wanted to be around 30. I had this thing in my mind. I wanted to be out of it and try to do something else. Not because I thought it was better. I just wanted to change and you maybe use different skills other than the being able to put scaffolds up to an extent. So yeah, I did the job interview with Simeon, and I did a job the same week with 48.3. A guy called Ben Beaumont, who, again, you've said you're coming on, so don't try and get out of it. But yeah, did a job interview with them, and I, never wasn't used to doing job interviews. Certainly didn't take my record of achievement.
No.
But yeah, the one with Simeon, it was like, went in, sat down, Simon Hughes is there, Dave Randall's is there. These are people I'd heard of and stuff, and I've sat down with them like, must have said something right, because I managed to get the job there. I'd got to the last round of interviews with 48.3 as well, to the point where it was like going to be, the physical interview. The first couple were done over Zoom.
All right.
One on Zoom, must have liked what they heard. Did a second one on Zoom. and I think other members of their team were there, and they went, right, can you come in, bring some of your own work with you, designs, drawings that you've worked off, things like that, and come in and do like the physical interview. So I was like, okay. Now I'd done the interview with Simeon, and Sarah was like, because I said, look, it's going pretty well with this one, and it's got, they seem quite positive when I spoke to them as well. So she was like, well, what do both jobs entail? As you know, design engineering, I can imagine, I obviously never went into that, but I can imagine there's quite a lot of emphasis on being pretty academic and being quite mathematically astute, which I'm not.
Yeah.
And I'd be the first to admit that. And, the other side of it is the Simeon job was a trainee instructor and inspector. And she was like, Isaac, you're a gobshite. You know what I mean? You could talk a glass eye to sleep. I actually said that to someone with a glass eye once. That's another story for another day. And I have witnesses to that conversation as well.
Did they take offence?
I just went like that. What? It was But anyway, so she went like, that's you all over speaking to people, and I suppose look at what we're doing now.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So I think I made the right choice. I think I made the right choice.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's one of them. I was only speaking to another lad the other day who's got into the just recently got into the instructing space. He's working for a friend of mine who owns Fulcrum and another company called Work at Height Solutions. And he also works offshore in like his kind of off time. So like he does a bit offshore, then comes home, does his shadowing for the CISRS courses, and now he's delivering courses himself. Obviously, the money offshore is pretty good, and the money in instructing can be quite good as well. I said to him, when you're offshore and when you come back home, I said, do you ever get that feeling where God, I wish I was back offshore again? It's like, never. Do you know what I mean? Never.
No.
I said, now, when you're offshore, do you miss what you're doing now? He's like, every day. He's like, every day. So it's one of them, it's like, yeah, he misses the instructing.
Yeah, so I like, why would you go back offshore? Is it purely
it's
purely financial, just to get that extra money in?
Yeah, but he'll go into instructing full time, I think.
Yeah.
And he sounds like he's going to be pretty good at it as well. And there is a shortage. Do you know what I mean? There is a shortage of people wanting to get into instructing.
Right.
Yeah, there is.
Surprising.
Yeah, I mean, the NASC and Scissors are between them. I have to ask more of an expert on it, but they've started putting funding out for training providers to help kind of fund that initial, because you have to do shadowing. When you're shadowing a course, you're not delivering, so technically it's a cost, to the business.
Yeah.
So have someone sit there just watching someone else delivering a course, imagine it's quite an impact. They're starting to put this funding out there to get more people interested in it. So this guy, I think he's going to go into it. I think he's going to do really well. Similar to me as well. He was young when he did it, and I think that's the thing that's changing. I think both in saying football and in construction, like younger people are getting more higher profile jobs earlier on now. I don't know whether you call it like the coaching culture or whatever, but a lot of football managers now seem to be a bit younger.
Yeah, it used to be the old boys, didn't it? Years of experience in the game. Now like you say, they're almost like they know they want to be a manager before they've even had a full playing career, or I'm trying to think of a good example as who was it? Who was
quite young,
coach at it was coach at United, McKenna.
Yeah,
and he obviously his playing career was cut short, so he just fast tracked himself straight into coaching, and now he's in a manager's job. I can't remember where.
But it does seem to be a trend, doesn't it? It's like more people are. You think about it, you've had a career of 15 years or 20 years for some people. By the time they get to the by the time they get to the mid-30s, they might have done 15 years. In the industry, you've learned. If you've been switched on, you can learn enough in that time to transfer those
certainly
skills.
pass it on to people just coming into it. But obviously, be wrong to say you can't learn everything. If I always still go to work with the attitude of if you've not learned anything or you've not tried something different, it's almost not worth it.
Yeah.
And you know,
Addy's looking at the cameras here.
We all good? Yeah.
Yeah, we are.
Good.
We are. But last week the battery caught, didn't it?
So yeah, you know that whole, you know, try and make sure you learn something new every day. You still can. You still can find a better or easier way to do any job, unless you're stuck on fronts and backs of houses.
Yeah.
But
you've got marginal gains in it. You try to find those marginal gains.
Yeah.
Back to the brew.
Shall we?
I think I'm going to crack one of these bad boys open.
Okay.
I think I'm going to crack one open. So, this is. I'm going to open that and I'm going to be really. Going to try and do something cool there. Look at that.
Open one with another. I'm going to use a ball opener.
So, which ones are from council estates? Did most of my early drinking on the streets, but we do. Is it better in a glass?
I prefer all my beer in a glass. Don't like to drink straight away. What you get the
get
the aroma.
Okay.
Coming through more, because the wider the top of the glass.
Okay, let's have a look. I hope we picked up the initial. That'd have been.
I think we did.
That'd be nice. Okay, so
cheers.
Cheers, and let's give this a go. I know we're gonna have to do the old clink. That. There we go. So
really, almost
that's
like
first thing I get. I'm not going to try and be some sort of connoisseur or anything like that. The smell's good. The smell is good.
That green and resinous.
Yeah. What am I getting there? What is it?
It's the hops, but we've got so this is supercharged with hops. They're all British.
Supercharged.
All British varieties now. How do I go about this?
Oh, you had one sip.
No. It's just where to start and how to describe it. American hops, Australian hops, New Zealand hops. They're all very, very sought after. There's some absolutely fantastic varieties. British beer was always brewed with British hops for years. Now, obviously, with the craze of the American, Australian, New Zealand varieties, and others as well, I'm just using them two. Them three are some very big hitters in terms of the varieties that they have. And everybody wants to brew beer with them.
I'm wondering if the microphone picked up that little bit of gas there. I'm going to move this away slightly. Go on.
And it's almost like British hops have been forgotten a little bit, but...
Oh, really?
Not by everybody, don't get me wrong. There's not just... I'm not the only brewer here try to push forward British hops and make them the forefront of what I do when I'm brewing beer. But there is, in the grand scheme of things, there are fewer brewers using British varieties than what there are others.
I've always found this with like, when you taste something and someone describes what you're tasting, and I've done this with spoke to me. We did it, me and the missus during lockdown. We had this we call it Decent Drop. They're actually a local company, and they were doing Zoom wine tasting things. And I can sit in the house with a bottle of wine. I can really enjoy it, but I enjoyed it infinitely more when people were saying, it goes well with this cheese. You're getting this flavour, and then like when you just said, then it's very. Did you say green?
Yeah.
I kind of got that
green, but not. Obviously, I don't know how many beer geeks will be listening to this because it's been predominantly scaffolding based for now.
That is your job.
No.
You've got to spread this far and wide to as many beer geeks as you can.
I certainly will be doing. But I'd like to say it's green, but not grassy. But people sometimes. Not people. Sorry, you can find in certain hoppy beers, hops have been left in too long. They start imparting grassy notes, and it's not that pleasant.
Right. How do you police that? Do you have to? Are you constantly? Because you can't try it as it's going through, or can you?
Yeah. Well, you just everyone's got different methods. it's a dry hopped beer as well. That's part and parcel of how you control the flavors of when you add your dry hops, and how long you leave them in there for. But ultimately, unless you've got a way of getting them out, leaving them in there is just timing it before you're about to barrel it off. So you get some in so many days before, then you might add another dose. Again a few days later, and then a final dose. This is kind of the route I go down. A final dose like 24 hours before, just a small one, just to lift it, just to get all the nice little delicate notes out of them. So you got these ones that have gone in at first that really start to almost turn grassy.
Right.
So that's where it kind of be green but not grassy. Then you get the big flavor punch from the middle set where it's kind of just taken everything, and then this little delicate bit at the end, which is all your almost the bits that are that volatile to be gone if you left them in too long. I'm probably not. I'm not articulating this as well as I thought I might be able to.
I'm banging on every word, mate. I'm not, when people say, hints of X, Y, and Z. And all the rest of it. I've always wondered this. Is that something that people put in during the brewing process? Like they'll go, I've heard people say like things like elderflower and things that are like very kind of British flavours. Do people put stuff like that in while it's brewing?
So I certainly know people that have brewed with the raw ingredients. So like if they wanted elderflower, and you would probably do it. But there's no doubt there'll be a combination of hops that would get you somewhere in the ballpark. Maybe not. If you was going to be that specific on it, I think something like elderflower would just be added to the beer at some point in the brewing process. But I think a better example of what you're talking about is you will see beers with notes of citrus, pine, and stuff like that, and a lot of that is just down to the hops and the malts that have been used. It's a shame the other beer that I was hopefully going to bring, which didn't end up being, for one reason or another. You get a real balance of flavors between citrus and then like your more I don't even know what kind of tropical, I suppose, like passion fruit. So there's a little bit of a mix of citrus and passion fruit, and then really weird kind of undertones of caramel, but that's coming from the malts. It's a very delicate caramel, and it just sweetens the whole thing up just that little bit, so it's not too sharp, it's not too hop based. Right. And I find it's probably one of my most balanced ales.
Right. So I was going to ask then, obviously the ingredients, they're going to be imported into what the flavors are going to be like once it's been brewed. The question was going to be, how do you maintain like a consistency? Because I can imagine things are going to be seasonal. A hop, I'd imagine, is going to taste different at different time of year.
Well, there's only one harvest.
But I suppose different climates though, because like you might have one summer where it's really hot, you might have one summer where it's...
That does affect.
And is the whole point that it's not consistent? It's like...
As brewers, obviously, the ultimately, the same plant year in, year out. The bread, obviously, and just like marijuana, they're the same.
We were speaking about this.
they are the same type of plant. It is a... I don't know what the terminology would be, but basically, it is the same type of plant. A hop plant is the same type of plant as a cannabis plant, but one grows hops, the other grows the other. Right. Yes, you're right in saying different climates will affect it, but ultimately, as brewers, we would use our, I suppose, our nose for it, our taste for it, to decide whether we needed to add or subtract on amounts that we're adding. Is it does a craft ale? I think that's the beauty of a craft ale. It is, and it's small batch brewed. It is going to change ever so slightly year to year.
We were talking about me before about like I hear all these terms and I've never really understood them, but I've always been interested. And we were talking about a session IPA and what constitutes a session drink. And I was like, oh, is it like, thought it might have had something to do with like a growing session. Like this is where we've grown this particular ingredient and it's only going to be for this particular batch. And Ant's like, no, session means session. It means having a good few drinks. It means that.
Yeah.
Like,
means you can sit, you can stay on it all day and probably still walk home at the end of it.
Yeah.
You know,
that depends who you are. We've got some good friends out there.
We've got friends who could session 6%ers. I don't really know how 6% in the session.
What's this, by the way?
This is 5%.
5%.
Yeah.
You're going to say.
Like I say,
it's early in the day as well, but you get that bit of a.
There's a good punch to it. It's dry. It's very citrusy. Like I say, there's that kind of like green resinous kind of vibe at the end. It's a shame that there is one flavour that I picked up on in my. So obviously, I say this is carbonated and put into bottles.
Mm-hmm. You've definitely picked the right one for me, by the way.
Yeah,
because I can drink the there's still more flat beers, but
like the cask ales.
Yeah, I do. This is more kind of familiar that
Yeah, the cask version of this, you get almost like orange bitters.
Right.
Imagine having like that out of a cocktail, but you get kind of these notes of orange, like really bitter orange in the background.
Where are they selling this?
I've stopped producing it. Funny enough, at the moment, this is a trial. This is another trial for it. I've stopped producing it to sell because I think it could be better. Basically, I've got other beers that ultimately don't cost as much to produce or sell.
Yeah.
So, and this is expensive and doesn't come anywhere near. One of the other ones.
Yeah,
so,
we were saying.
I'm sorry to bring you a trial.
No.
I just didn't have the ability to bring anything else today. But I thought it'd be nice to have a share. And ultimately, it's not a bad beer. It's just not where what goes into it isn't where I need it to be. So it's either let's strip it back and find out where we can add it to make it better, or I think that's the only way really. Considering adding more is only going to make it more expensive. So, and I don't think that's not the way forward.
So, Addy's showing me the timing. He's got 5 minutes. 5 minutes. So,
right.
We're ready to kind of wrap up quickly. Where can people find this? Oh, not quickly. Even you got 5 minutes. Where can we find?
Okay. We'll be running short on time in terms of.
He's already grabbing his car keys.
No, I don't know why I grabbed my keys. I'm fidgeting now because you told me I've got 5 minutes. Basically, Oldham Beer and Cider Festival is next week.
Okay, where's that been?
Friday and Saturday at Queen Elizabeth Hall, right in the centre of Oldham.
Yep, know it well.
Yeah, so I don't know when this session's going to actually be released, but
I'll try and put a rough in it.
Yeah, no, but at the end of the day, like I say, I've got to mention it. If it gets out in time for people to hear about it, I'll be promoting it on the socials. I'm going to be working there behind the bar on Friday night and Saturday daytime.
I can rate your pint pulling skills. We were talking about this as well, weren't we?
Yeah. Oh, I don't pull a good pint.
Well, it's interesting though. There's a boozer down the road, and it's like they've got a brewery, so it's not like a, it's nothing kind of bespoke or anything like that. It's a mainstream brewery.
Yeah.
It's the Street Bridge, and the fellow pulling me a pint there, he was like, he's pulling this pint, and he's like, I'm not happy with that. Just wait a minute, I'm not happy with that.
Well, we've been in the Street Bridge before, years ago.
We were done.
Yeah.
Probably that day when with the giant phone football incident.
Yeah. I think I know where it is. It's just over a little bridge, isn't it?
Yeah. The Street Bridge. It's this guy's like pulling this pint. He's like, I'm happy with that, and then goes back and he's like, and I'm always impressed when I see somebody who's like passionate about what they're doing, and they're not just. And I mean, with you saying that you've pulled certain beers because you're not happy with them, really impressed by that. Do you know what I mean? Because it shows that you've got your passion. It's not like you're not willing to just go, nah, give me the money. This thing needs to sell. It's and I think people like that in business get found out pretty quickly. Just want to
Yeah.
make a quick buck. You've clearly taken the long right path.
Yeah, I've had we sell to a pub down down in Derby, and the first batch is so I tend to send 2 down at a time, obviously make my journey worthwhile. And one of the first barrels she put on was a foul one. Wow, that's just a mishap. That's just an unfortunate mishap, and it happens to every brewery.
Right.
Obviously, the best thing is that the customer never finds it. If there's somebody good behind the bar looking after the ale, which I know they do. They've been like an award-winning pub down that way for serving real ale. And she got in touch with me, and she told me that the barrel wasn't great. And the first thing I did was said, let me work out my schedule. I was gutted. I felt like crying. It was my first one as well. So it was the first time anybody rang me back and told me that the beer was foul. So I was like wounded. But I got my schedule. I was like, listen, as soon as I can get you a replacement barrel, I'll be down. I think I got down there that Saturday with a replacement barrel for her.
Shows the commitment, doesn't it?
Yeah. And and it's not exactly around the corner, is it, Derby? But it was worthwhile doing. It is worthwhile doing to make sure that anybody down that it doesn't taint her view of their view of our brewery. It shows that we actually care.
It shows you're committed to your product,
rather than just going, I'll just send you the money back. I'll just give you a refund. I've done a refund inadvertently, but it's not a monetary one. It's you getting the product, making sure that she knows that that product is how it should be. And we do that with anybody who has an issue. Obviously, I do like to inspect, and I did inspect that barrel when I got down there, and it was not to anywhere near the standard that we expect our beer to be at.
It's impressive that you'd go that. It's going the extra mile. I think with that attitude in business, you'll if you can get out there and make sure that you're delivering the best product you possibly can, you're delivering the best service you possibly can, and you're true to your word. I think you'll go very, very far.
Yeah,
I certainly hope so.
Thank you,
mate. There's so much more we could go into on this episode, so much more. I think the only thing we could possibly do is get you back on.
Okay.
So after the festival, maybe a couple of weeks after.
Can I mention one more event? I needed to open my phone to have a look at my calendar because I'll get the date wrong otherwise. The Bomb in Rochdale on the 28th, 29th and 30th. I think the 28th is a Friday, so we're kind of like Friday payday for those who are paid monthly. We are having what is called a tap takeover. Basically, we will have 6 beers on tap there. Basically, our full range, minus this one, because like I say, it's still in trials. This one won't be on. But there may be a trial of the new version on, but it won't be labelled as this beer.
First trial?
It won't be labelled as Fever Dream.
It's passed the first trial.
Thank you very much.
We're loving it.
The Bomb in Rochdale on the 28th, 29th and 30th of April, Wakey Wakey Brewing Company will have 6 beers on the hand pulls, on all cask ale, and it'll be a good day. I'll be down there to talk to people about my beer as well. So,
well, I think you've done a great job of promoting on this, and the proof is in the products, as they say, and this is a lovely drink. So thanks for sharing it with us. Thanks for coming on the podcast. It's been fantastic having you. Definitely going to continue this conversation and get you back on. But I think for now, best thing we can probably do is head for a pint.
Have another beer, yeah.
Absolutely.
Nice
Cheers.
one.
Thanks,
Cheers.
guys. Thanks for tuning in.